One of the things I was always obsessed about is Sailor Moon. And that's why we're going to paint a beautiful sunset and skyline scenery inspired by Sailor Moon with watercolors in 10 simple steps. Let's go! By the way, make sure to click on the bell to turn notifications on and to comment below #makoccino in the first 24 hours when I upload a new video for a chance to get a shout out and to win lots of cool arts and crafts supplies in my ongoing giveaway. The winner will be announced at the end of every month in one of my videos that I post every Thursday and Saturday. And now let's jump into the tutorial. This is optional, but I really like to apply some washi tape all around the paper to achieve a wet frame once the painting is finished. Now the first step is creating the first layer of the painting. Here I'm going to use a light shade of red and yellow watercolor paint that I will add one by one to the paper. Now to apply the paint, I used a flat brush and then distributed the paint evenly, starting with a light shade of red. From here we want to mix a little bit of yellow to the first wash of paint to add a little bit of warmth by creating a really subtle shade of orange. But do this very quickly as we don't want the red paint to start drying, or otherwise the paint will create unwanted, blotchy areas once everything is dry. While the paint is still wet, take something round and flat and wrap it into some tissue paper. And next, press it down where you want to add the sun. This way we absorb all the paint into the tissue paper while creating a clean round shape for the sun on top of our sky. Since I used something round that had a hole in the center, I had to go back and remove some of the paint using some tissue paper. Now let everything completely dry and we can move on to the next step. Step number 3 is adding more details to the sky to make it look more realistic. Here we don't want to be super precise though. All we want is to add a few clouds by using a slightly darker shade. Here I just created the general shape of a cloud on the left and on the right side without adding any further details. Using the same shade of color, I also went ahead and outlined the sun, starting from the edge of the sun and then blended it out towards the sides of the painting to soften the edges. We really just want to create this effect of glowing. As soon as the sky is dry, we can go back using the same yellow shade that you used in the beginning to fill in the circle. You can also blend it out towards the sides to add a little bit of warmth to the glowing part of the sky. And now comes the part where most of us feel really overwhelmed and scared, and that's painting the skyline. It's not only scary because there are so many buildings to paint, but also so many details such as windows and lights you have to think about, but don't worry. We will break it down into really easy steps so you can sketch out any skyline you want in the future. Now let's start with the furthest part of the skyline. To create the buildings, I mixed my red color paint with a little bit of purple to make it darker, and then I went ahead and started adding squares of different heights to the horizon using a smaller flat brush. I used my Sailor Moon reference just to get an idea where to place the buildings, but we don't have to absolutely follow it. You can make some buildings smaller and wider, some taller and more narrow, just to add more variety to the painting. Now let the paint dry and we can move on to the second row of buildings. The closer the buildings, the darker they seem to us, so the second row of buildings is going to be the same, just slightly darker. Here I repeat the same steps but used a slightly darker shade and placed the buildings a little bit lower. This dark shade is also great for adding details to the first row of buildings. You can simply use the flat brush to add outlines to the buildings and also small horizontal lines to make them look like small windows far, far away. Here again, we don't have to be precise. We just want to have a hint of windows. Again, let everything completely dry and we can move on to the third row of buildings. Here we can be more precise, but not really. This means, since we are now closer to the viewer, we shouldn't forget about his perspective. Since the viewer is looking rather straight into one single point somewhere in the center, the outer edges of the buildings angle towards this one point in the center. So we want to recreate this perspective by adding walls to the building that look towards the center. As this is just a rough sketch, you don't absolutely have to be super precise. But if you want to learn more about it to improve your art, you can look into different perspectives and how to achieve them. Here again, I create the overall shapes of the buildings using a slightly darker shade of color and then let everything dry. Hang in there, we are done with the scariest part of this painting. The next step is adding more details by adding more detailed objects to the painting and by outlining the buildings we just created. For this step, I'm going to use a thin brush and then outline the buildings using a darker shade of color that is a mixture of red and purple colored paint. Don't forget that we don't try to paint it super accurately and hyper realistically. I intentionally chose this picture to recreate because if you look closely, it is so simple, but it conveys so much through the mood you can almost feel by looking at the picture. So you don't always have to be super precise when you paint something. You can just break it down into simple shapes and just use a few different colors to create a base, and from there you can slowly build up the painting by adding more and more details. This will make it easier for you to see what is missing and what you can add to your painting to make it look amazing. This is how it looks so far. Now let everything completely dry and we can build out the painting even more and we are done. Now one of the first things I did is darken the area around the sun the same way as in the beginning, just by using a slightly darker shade of color. This will intensify the appearance of the sunset and the clouds around it. And since the skyline is from an area in Tokyo, you can also add the TV tower. Here I'm using a thin brush to create the triangle shape by adding one line at a time. You simply press down the brush one step at a time until you created the overall shape of the tower. And from here you can add the details. If you want to make the tower look super precise, you can sketch out a few guidelines first so you know where to paint, or just wing it and hope for the best as I do it here. Don't worry guys, we are almost done. Step number 7 is adding a few highlights to the painting. As we have a sun in the background, even if it sets, it still reflects on the windows and walls of the buildings. So for this step, I'm going to use my beloved white ink pen that I will link in the description box for you guys so you can check it out. You just want to go over your painting and add a few lines here and there, not really thinking about it too much. We simply do the same thing as we did when we outlined the buildings with a darker shade. With this pen, you can also add lines on top of the buildings to create a hint of windows in the background. I think this really adds so much life to the painting even though we don't add one window at a time super precisely. We just add a hint of realism. I also use this pen to add details to the tower and the sun. Step number 8 is finally removing the washi tape to really see what needs to be fixed, changed, or added. Now I used the white pen to add reflections to some areas that had glass elements, and then used a darker shade of paint and a thin brush again to add even more outlines and shadows to the buildings. Sometimes we don't see certain things immediately, so it's totally okay to switch things up. You don't absolutely have to follow something step by step all the time. Experiment and see what works and what doesn't, and learn from it. If something doesn't turn out the way I hoped, I don't see it as a failure. I'm actually happy that this way I can discover what doesn't work and find even better solutions for certain things. So instead of being afraid to add brush strokes to the painting and ruining something, just relax and add a few lines here and there. It doesn't always have to make sense. Sometimes adding a hint of something without making it super precise is actually something that can make an art piece super interesting, because this looseness and the free expression can add so much character, a certain mood, and maybe even a story to a simple art piece. So don't stress too much, just let go and have fun. And the final step is something I spontaneously discovered for myself, and it's adding a glow to the city by using a white pastel or white chalk. We simply want to add a little bit of the powder to the middle row of the buildings and a little bit to the sun, and then carefully blend it out. This way we kind of recreate the glowing of the different windows and lights inside the city. And this is the final result. I really hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up to support this channel. Make sure you're subscribed and have your notifications on by clicking on the bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video on Thursdays and on Saturdays. Thank you so much for watching guys, have a wonderful day, and I will see you soon. Bye!